everyone. Here we go. 1.5 nitrogen cycle, fifth lesson in our AP Environmental Science curriculum. We're moving through it. We just talked about the carbon cycle. Now we're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle. Again, this is a little bit shorter of a lesson. That's good for most of you. But the one thing about this nitrogen cycle I will tell you is it is really detail oriented. So please make sure you understand it. If you don't understand it, you know what you can do. Always shoot me an email, ask for help, and I'll gladly help you out. All right, so without further ado, let's get to talking about the nitrogen cycle. Again, standards, read them on your own time, but pretty much I have to teach you this, so that's why I'm teaching you this. So let's talk about the nitrogen cycle. Now, the nitrogen cycle is incredibly important. Everything I always say is incredibly important. That's because it is, all right? But the nitrogen cycle is important because it influences plant growth. And we know we don't have any life on the planet if we don't have plant growth. So it's extremely important because it is a nutrient needed for plants to grow. If you have anyone that ever does anything with fertilizers, one of the key components of fertilizers is nitrogen. So what we're doing is we're amplifying the amount of nitrogen in the ecosystem so that plants can grow because it does not cycle through that rapidly. So it's really important to understand. All right. When we talk about nitrogen, it is one of the major limiting reactants of photosynthesis. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, you're like, photosynthesis, that's just sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, and I go and form glucose and oxygen as a waste product. Well, what they never really told you in bio is that there's actually a lot of lesser micronutrients that are needed for that reaction to take place. Nitrogen, phosphorus being key components of that reaction that you didn't really talk about. Now, nitrogen being a limiting reactant, if it's not there, you can't really go through photosynthesis. So as it becomes available, you use it up. And that's why when it is available in excess, we often get problematic situations to occur with the amount of floral growth. So every now and then, if you've ever been to a golf course and during the summertime and you see that body of water that's just full of algae, that's because they fertilized the golf course so much, all that fertilizer runs into that body of water. Now all that nitrogen's in that body of water and the algae can just grow rapidly. Nitrogen is also really unique in that it's the most abundant gas on the planet. When you breathe in, you're breathing in diatomic nitrogen, N2 gas. It makes up 78% of the volume you breathe. But the one thing about N2 gas, when you bond nitrogen together, it's triple bonded together. So because it's triple bonded together, it does not want to break apart easily. It requires a lot of energy to break apart nitrogen. So that's why we can't just say, oh, plants, well, why don't you just use the nitrogen in the atmosphere? They try, but there's actually a very specialized bacteria that live with the plants and help them to kind of coexist and to help them to break down that nitrogen in the atmosphere so that they can use it for uptake or what we call assimilation. All right. Now, like I said, this is very technical, this unit, this little cycle itself. So I want to go through some of the terminology with you so you're prepared for it and so you know how to use it and practice understanding it. We talked about fixation with carbon, the idea that you're taking small carbon and you're joining together. Well, fixation for nitrogen is when you're going to be converting atmospheric diatomic nitrogen gas into ammonia, NH3. Now there's ammonia and ammonium. All right, ammonium has an extra letter. Ammonia is NH3. Ammonium has an extra H, so it's NH4. That's how I remember it. It's stupid, but it works. All right. Now this allows plants to uptake nitrogen. Ammonia is useful for plants. They can use this. All right. And what actually commonly will happen is that you have bacteria living in with the plants, in the specialized parts in their roots, these areas called nodules. In the nodules, you'll have these bacteria that live there, and they can actually fix nitrogen for uptake from the plants. One family of plants that's very, very famous for having these special nodules in their root systems are the legumes. The legumes are beans. So if you have a farmer that's like, we need more nitrogen in the field, and they have plenty of growing time, they can plant a whole bunch of beans there. So oftentimes you'll see farmers cycle. So they plant corn one year, and they'll plant soybeans the next. Well, the soybeans can actually grow fine, But what they're also going to be doing is reinstilling nitrogen back into the soil. So it's actually really good for soil conservation practices to rotate your crops so you don't just deplete all the nutrients all the time. Now, assimilation. Assimilation is when the plants can actually uptake the nutrient. So assimilation is the uptake of the nutrients from the plants by their roots. So they're actually able to pull in the nutrients now. Again, even if it's just there, they have to have it in a usable form. N2 gas is not usable for the roots, but they have the bacteria living there. Yes, it is useful. Nitrification. Nitrification is when you convert ammonia to nitrite, NO2, and then eventually it will be converted to nitrate for assimilation. Nitrate is the way in which you get nitrogen to the plants. So when you talk about fertilizer and stuff like that, they're usually nitrate compounds. Different things like that, like ammonium nitrate is a very, very common fertilizer compound to get nitrate for assimilation for plants. And finally, denitrification. Denitrification is when you go from nitrate to back to nitrogen gas into the atmosphere. So that could happen through decomposition or various other bacteria living within the soil. It's important to understand that there's many different organisms all working together just to help plants get nitrogen for uptake. And that's something I really want you to understand, is that it's not just a very simplified cycle. So let's take a look here. Now I've got two two drawings of the nitrogen cycle. We're going to start with one. I'm going to start with the one on the right just because I think it's a little easier to draw on. The one on the left is a little bit more technical and allows you guys to see the specific names of different organisms in those areas. But we're going to start with that atmospheric nitrogen, N2 gas, the diatomic nitrogen. Now we have specialized plants. Here's a bean plant. All right. And in the root system, you have those nodules. And in those nodules, you have nitrogen-fixing bacteria. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria are eventually creating nitrates. So they're creating nitrates so that the plant can uptake the nitrogen. But we also have nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil will go and generate ammonium through the process of ammonification. And then the ammonium will go through nitrifying bacteria to form nitrites, eventually to nitrates. Again, nitrates then are able to be assimilated into plants. I know, it's confusing. All right, there's a lot of steps here. Make sure you understand them. Make sure you understand the different technical terms. Make sure you understand the difference between nitrate, nitrate, ammonium, ammonia. Right? Where do decomposers fall into this whole system? Well, decomposers are helping to break down nitrogen that's in organisms. Remember that nitrogen is actually pretty common in your body. All right, if you think back to the macromolecules of life you learned in biology, you know that carbohydrates and lipids contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, but proteins and nucleic acids both contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And nucleic acids also have phosphorus involved in them. But carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen exist in proteins, exist in nucleic acids. So when an organism dies, all the proteins that are in their body and the other nitrogen compounds in their body are going to be broken down and released. So decomposers are important because they're going to help to create ammonium and eventually cycle things around in the planet. So hopefully that helps you to understand the nitrogen cycle. I know it's short. I know it was fast. All right. We're going to kind of spend some time kind of reviewing the cycles. They're not the most critical things to know, but it's important to understand, why do plants need nitrogen? And here you have your answer. So with that, we end the nitrogen cycle. We have another cycle coming up next in the next lesson. Hopefully you're as excited for that as I am, and I look forward to seeing you next time. All right. Thank you.
You like that lesson? I know you did. So why don't you go ahead and smash that like button right now. Go ahead and comment. Tell all your friends about how great that lesson was. And make sure you subscribe, because I'm going to keep bringing you AP environmental content that you're going to want to watch. Or do whatever else those other YouTube channels tell you to do. And with that, Maloney.